Like the video, please, if you haven't done so already. Get yourself subscribing to The Football. Big stories to go through, but more importantly, your opinion on these stories. That matters the most to us. Thank you to everyone who watches, everyone who tunes in. Like, share, and subscribe. This last offer via intermediaries was as high as 65 million. Arsenal expected to go north of 70 million. And broad terms are already in place with Bruno Guimaraes. Newcastle sources insist they want to keep Bruno G. One other Premier League club has made a recent inquiry as well on the player's side. Now, that echoes a number of reports today. I think one came from Gary Jacobs as well. Also, Sam Collins and Jack Rosier also said that Arsenal have opened direct talks with Newcastle over a move for Bruno G. So a number of different sources and a number of different journalists today have said that the deal was now advancing. We spoke about this last night, that the idea of Arsenal bidding again was picking up some pace and becoming more and more likely. Now, of course, there is this club who has got involved. Could it be Chelsea? Because Chelsea have wanted him. Could it be United who have inquired before? I think some Arsenal fans in our group chats got a little nervous this afternoon. We're saying, oh my God, I can't take this again. Imagine if we get hijacked. And that is the risk of trying to negotiate prices down. That is the risk of trying to get players to fully commit to you. This is where it can go wrong. Everybody agrees it can go wrong. But Arsenal have got the broad details done on personal terms. Some journalists have stated that they're fully agreed. They're going to be no problem. And the player is committed and told Newcastle that he wants to join Arsenal. We saw that update from David Ornstein himself. So from my point of view and perspective, this deal feels like it is very close to accelerating at this stage. I feel like this deal is very advanced in the sense, so let me explain this before some of you lose your minds. I don't think there's many more stages to go through. I think Arsenal have done a lot of groundwork in terms of working out the price. The player terms are there or thereabouts agreed. They just needs to be an agreement between Newcastle and Arsenal, and it's done. Now, the Newcastle media are doing what they do every time a player is linked with a move away. There is almost a denial and a reluctancy to believe that it is true. The problem that you have is that we've seen HIJACK leave, we've seen Tonali leave, we have seen Anthony Gordon leave. Most of us believe Bruno G is going to go. Now, whether it ends up being Arsenal or not is almost an irrelevance to that point. It feels as though he's going to leave. But I saw a few tweets today from Luke Edwards. And I have to say they're the most disgraceful tweets I've seen in a while. So he put out a tweet about 3 hours ago saying, breaking news, senior sources at Newcastle are mystified by claims Arsenal have opened club-to-club talks over the signing of Bruno Guimaraes. It goes, they've not heard from anyone involved about a potential deal for weeks. He goes on to say they want to keep him, etc. Fairly standard reply to this news. He then quote tweets it about less than an hour ago, about an hour ago, and says, all this comes a day after Kevin Keegan died, by the way. Arsenal are not making any friends at Newcastle, and this is a very odd way to go about trying to sign the captain and most important player of another club. There are other words I could use about this behavior, but I won't. Now, I think using Kevin Keegan in this way is despicable. Arsenal are working on the deal via intermediaries, which is so typical in football, to make it seem that Now, I want to speak about the Arsenal situation with Julian Alvarez. This story came out today, and you can see it reads that Arsenal have made major progress in their pursuit of the Atletico striker, Julian Alvarez. Atletico have told Alvarez's representatives they could approach a move to Arsenal this summer. Andre Berta held direct talks with Alvarez, who is open to a Premier League return. Now, I have seen this story or parts of this story on a number of occasions over the course of this summer. Now, many people will instantly reject this. There's no chance. There's no way. This can't happen. This is an impossibility on every level. And as you all know, I think Barcelona are the favourites. I still think there's a way they and Atletico might do a deal. But I do believe that Atletico will sell the player. But I think they really want to sell him outside of their of Spain. They don't want it to be a domestic sale. This has also been met with another claim today, which is Julian Alvarez' most likely destination is Arsenal. Now, I don't agree with this claim at this particular moment. Do I think it's the possibility? Is there a possibility that Arsenal is his destination? Yes. The most likely? No. And the reason I say no to it is because I don't trust that Atletico won't crumble to Barcelona. I don't trust that. I've seen too many teams in the past say, we won't sell, we won't sell, we won't sell, and then sell. I don't fully trust it. Now, I'd rather him go to Barcelona. Of course I would. I don't want him to become an Arsenal player, but that doesn't mean that my opinions on a story are going to change. I'm not going to sit there and do what a lot of creators do in this space. No chance, impossible. And then when he does go to Barca, I tell you it was impossible. They're wrong. They're lying to you. They're not telling the truth. It's not how these things work. There is a genuine possibility that Arsenal get him. Now, that's my opinion on this story. How do you guys see it? How do you guys see it? Because there are lots of varying opinions around this story, to be fair. And of course, I saw the big report from one of the biggest talk shows, sports talk shows in Spain, saying that Atletico and Arsenal have reached an agreement on Julian Alvarez of 50 million euros plus Victor Gyökeres. But also said Alvarez is refusing to agree personal terms. Now, this was struck with community notes. This was shut down instantly. And I'm not really a fan of that approach. And the reason I'm not a fan of that approach is because there might be a kernel of truth in that. Maybe Atletico have said, look, informally, they've said, look, if you offer us Gyökeres and can convince him to come, and you
now
pay
here's
us...
where it gets complicated. Alvarez's heart, by most reports, is set on Barcelona. But Atletico Madrid have made their stance towards Barcelona brutally clear, insisting they won't sell to their La Liga rivals for any price, and pointing instead to his colossal €500 million release clause as the only route Barcelona could take. That's not a negotiating tactic, that's Atletico effectively shutting the door completely. Barcelona's opening bid, reportedly worth around €100 million, was, according to sources, laughed off by Atletico's hierarchy. So where does that leave Arsenal? According to multiple reports, this is exactly the opening Arsenal have been waiting for. Sources suggest Atletico would actually prefer to sell to a Premier League club rather than help a domestic rival strengthen, and Arsenal have reportedly been named the strongest bidder in the race, alongside interest from Liverpool. Sporting director Andrea Berta, who was actually at Atletico Madrid when they originally signed Alvarez from Manchester City, is said to have held direct talks with the striker's representatives, and has reportedly learned that Alvarez is open to a return to the Premier League after all, despite earlier suggestions he wasn't keen on going back to England, having already left Manchester City once before. Now let's talk numbers, because this is where the reporting gets genuinely wild. Some outlets have suggested Arsenal's opening approach could be structured as a swap deal, involving Victor Gyökeres heading to Atletico as part of the package alongside a fee in the region of $100 million, which would put the total value of the deal north of $160 million. Other reports out of Spain suggest Arsenal's overall package could stretch beyond £170 million if a straightforward agreement is reached without the swap element. And there are also reports floating a figure closer to £67 million as one component being discussed in the structure of a deal, though it's important to stress that number appears to be just one piece of a much larger and more complex overall package rather than the full valuation Atletico are looking for. Paul Scholes, for what it's worth, has publicly urged Arsenal to push the boat out completely, insisting Alvarez would be worth in excess of £100 million on his own footballing merit. There's also a fascinating subplot developing around Christos Zolis, the Greek forward Arsenal signed for around £34 million earlier this summer. Reports suggest Arsenal could actually be willing to include him as makeweight or negotiating leverage in a deal for Alvarez, which tells you just how badly Arteta wants this one done. When a club is willing to move on a player they only just signed months earlier, that's usually a sign of just how highly they rate the target they're chasing. It's also worth remembering the context Arsenal are operating in right now. They've already missed out on Morgan Rogers, who ended up joining Chelsea for a reported £117 million after Arsenal held a valuation line that ultimately cost them the deal. There's a real sense that Arsenal's hierarchy understands they cannot afford another near miss on a genuinely elite target, and that appears to be reflected in just how aggressively they're now pursuing Alvarez, with reports describing recent progress as groundbreaking and suggesting Atletico are increasingly ready to approve a move to the Emirates specifically. So where does this leave us? Alvarez wants out of Atletico. Barcelona remain his stated preference but are financially and structurally blocked by that release clause situation. Arsenal, by contrast, appear to have a genuinely open pathway, direct dialogue through Berta, and reported willingness from Atletico to do business with an English club ahead of a domestic rival. The fee, whatever final structure it takes, is going to be substantial, likely somewhere between £100 million and £170 million depending on whether a swap element is involved. Nothing here is signed, sealed or official yet, so treat every number circulating right now as part of an evolving, fast-moving story rather than a confirmed figure. Let me know in the comments whether you think Arsenal actually get this over the line, and if you'd be happy seeing Arsenal include a makeweight like Zolas or even Gyökeres to sweeten the deal. Subscribe so you're first to know the moment this moves from speculation to something concrete, because with Arsenal defending the title, this Alvarez chase might end up being the biggest story of their entire summer.